How's it going, everybody? This is Tapa Drabo. Hope you're having another great day, and welcome back to another video. Alright, for this video, I'm going to be sharing with you how to pay off your student loans. Now, this is obviously a very scary time for those that are fresh out of college, because one of the things that you're going to have to do is pay off all of the student loans that you borrowed during your time in college. And that can take a very long time if you accrued so much of it during the course of your 4-year career, depending on your scholarships, how much you borrowed, all of that stuff. So for this video, I'm going to be sharing with you a few tips based on what I have learned lately on how you can pay them off with relative ease. Alright, so obviously the last few years, student loans have been put on pause by the government because obviously of the COVID pandemic, and really that was a benefit for a lot of those people that were just graduating during that time, and I was one of those because I was one of those that graduated in the middle of the pandemic in December of 2020. But however, they are restarting soon, which means students that only just recently graduated or graduated in the middle of the pandemic, they are going to have to start paying their student loans very soon. Trust me, that's something that I don't like to do. You know, I really wish that there was colleges that were tuition free. Obviously, I know that was proposed a long time ago. However, unfortunately, that's just a part of life. If you're going to go to college and get your degree so that way you can utilize it to find a good paying job and have a good life, you're going to have to find a way to pay for all the bills to go to college. You know, obviously, there are multiple ways for you to be able to do it. Scholarships is obviously one of those things. You know, you can win money through scholarships. And also, you're ultimately going to get some help with paying through other methods as well. You know, it's a very good way to be able to utilize that so that way you can pay for your college bills. That's something that I was able to do. I wasn't able to get too much of the loans because, you know, I was ineligible most of the time, but I was able to get a scholarship or two so that way I can be able to pay for all that debt. But unfortunately, all of that money that you do accrue, that you use to pay for your college tuition, is ultimately going to come into your student loans. And at some point, once you graduate from college, you are going to have to pay that off. Take it from me, once it was learned that pause was coming to an end, I was one of those that really had to learn to do it. Fortunately, I didn't have that many in my account, so I was able to pay the whole thing off in just one lump sum. So obviously that's a good thing for me. However, still, there are not many others that just graduated from college that are really going to go through that same thing. In fact, paying for student loans is probably one of the harshest things that any person that's fresh out of college can do, because this can take years, if not much longer, to be able to accomplish. So that being said, having only recently just paid off my student loans, I'm going to share with you 3 things that you need to know so that way you can be able to pay off your student debt with relative ease. And the first one that you need to know is to learn how much you have to pay back. Now, if you are accruing money through a whole bunch of different methods to pay for your college tuition throughout the course of your 4-year career, then obviously chances are you're going to have a very high amount. It really depends on how much debt you get and how many classes that you take for each semester. And if you were to continue after your bachelor's degree and go for a master's program or even a doctorate program as well, then that bill is only going to go even higher, which means more interest rates that you're going to have to pay off for your student loans. Trust me, that's going to be a very harsh thing that you're going to have to learn, but ultimately you can figure that out. So usually the best methods for you to be able to do that is to go through your website that you used to when you went to college, like your university website, or you can go on to something like, like FAFSA, so that way you can be able to figure out how much you need to pay off and then ultimately who your loan provider was, so that way you can be able to know exactly who to pay off your loans to and how you can do it. Now, obviously, most of the time you're going to have to pay it off through the government, but if there was another loan provider that you were able to really help pay your college tuition with, then that's another provider that you're going to have to pay off your loans to. Trust me, it's going to take a lot of research for you to be able to figure out exactly who you are getting that money from and who you need to get it back to, so that way you can be able to be debt free eventually within a certain amount of time. And again, this can take a while, you know, whether or not it's a few months or maybe even a year or two, you're ultimately going to have to know who you're going to be able to pay those loans off to. And then obviously the most important thing, you're going to have to figure out how much you accrued during your time in college. Now, obviously, if you got a very small amount, maybe like $5,000 or less than that, then hey, you can pay the whole thing off in just one lump sum and then you're good to go. You don't really have to worry about paying off your student loans afterwards. That's something that I just did recently. However, that's not going to be the same for everybody else. And so obviously, you're just going to have to figure out how much that you have to pay back so that way you can get that in a certain amount of time. Trust me, seeing a very large amount of money on that account accrued, that can really scare people. But hey, as long as you at least go in there with an open mind, you'll be able to figure out how you're going to be able to pay all those loans off very quickly. The next thing you're going to need to understand is how you're going to be able to pay it off. You're going to have to decide how you're going to do it. You can pay a certain amount as long as it's above the number that you're supposed to pay for a certain month for a series of months, or as I said before, if you have a very small amount of money, just pay it off in one lump sum. Now, as I said before, if you have a very small number of loans that you have to pay off, then hey, good for you. You can just pay the whole thing off in one whole paycheck. Once you do that, you are good to go the entire course of the way. You don't have to worry about any of your student loans anymore, and you're basically done right away. But again, it just depends on how much that you have in there. So the less that you have accrued, the better. But it gets very difficult if you accrued a whole lot more than that. Like we're say, I don't know, like 10,000 or more than that, that's when it becomes very, very difficult. So you're gonna have to decide afterwards how you're gonna be able to pay all of your loans off, whether it's through a short amount of time or if it's a very, very long period of time, whether it's through a series of months or years. Now, a certain way for you to be able to do this is that usually every month your loan provider will tell you exactly how much you need to pay per month. So let's say if you decide you're just going to pay that amount, then you can just continue to pay that for a series of months or even a few years or so until ultimately your loans are completely forgiven. If you still have some after at least, I don't know, like 20 or 25 years or so, or if you don't have that much, it completely gets fulfilled. So that way you don't have to worry about that anymore. Or if you really want to take it up a notch, you can try to do more than that. Like let's say you can do like 2 or 3 times of that. Now, obviously you're going to have to be very, very careful with how much of that you're going to use, because again, a lot of that money, you're also going to have to utilize that for other things as well. Like for example, your home or your car or, everything else like your family or groceries and, doing all your laundry and all that stuff, paying all the bills. So it's very important that you be wise with how much money you're going to spend if you're going to try to do more than the amount that you're expected to pay per month. So let's say it asks you to pay $100 a month and you have at least $10,000 in accrued debt that you need to pay off in regards to student loans. Well, let's say if you decide to pay off 500 of that every month instead of 100. Hey, you can literally be done with that in literally about like a year or so. Or if you decide to do like $1,000 per month instead of the usual 100, then hey, maybe you can get it done in literally just less than 10 months or so. So it really just depends on how you decide to pay off your loans and how much money that you decide to pay off per month, so that way you ultimately reach that goal of getting all of your student loans paid. Now again, if you have a very low amount, then good news for you. You can just pay it off in one whole lump sum and you're good to go. But it's not going to be that way for everybody. So as long as you know exactly how much you need to pay per month, how you decide to pay off all of those loans per month or per year, it's going to be very crucial for you to be able to get through all of that without getting any extra interest rates or something like that. Finally, the most important thing that you really need to do, get that payment in as soon as you possibly can. Now, obviously, it is going to give you a due date for you to be able to get your loans in on time. And so it's very important that you're able to get that in by that particular due date. Now, obviously, with interest having recently restarted earlier this month, obviously the first due date for payments in regards to that will most likely be October 1st. And this is just going to continue for every single month. So then the payments would be due on November 1st. It would then be due on December 1st or January 1st. And it would basically just continue for month after month after month until you ultimately pay off all of your loans. And so you need to make sure that you be able to pay off all those loans before that certain due date. And really the best way for you to do that is to make sure that you get it done as early as you possibly can. And really the best way to do that is right at the very beginning of the month, in my opinion. Now, if you're able to get it done like within the first week or so of the new month, then hey, that's a lot of pressure off of you, because it allows you to take your mind off of it until the very next month when you have to do it again. And as long as you keep doing that for every single month that you're continuing to pay those loans, you're ultimately going to be able to reach your goal of becoming student debt free. Because if you don't get your payment in by the due date, then you're going to have your interest rates skyrocket. And unfortunately, that's only going to cause a lot more problems for you. And if you continue to push that off and not pay for it, it's only going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And pretty soon, you're going to be in really big debt. And trust me, that is not something that you really want to end up in if you're trying to focus on something like, getting your own home so that way you can have an independent life. And, just make sure that you have a happy job as well. So yeah, basically, as long as you do that, you're going to be just fine. Now, again, if it's in one lump sum, then hey, whether it's early in the month or later in the month, then hey, you're good to go. You don't have to worry about that anymore. But still, if you're going to pay it off in certain amounts for a certain period of time, it's best that you make sure that you get it done as early as you possibly can. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with a huge debt as soon as the due date passes. And trust me, that is not a position that you want to end up getting into. Now, I'm not somebody that knows my finances very well. In fact, I only, as I said before, just recently paid paid off my student debt in one lump sum. So for people like me, especially those that graduated from college in the middle of the pandemic, having to pay off your student debts again after not having to worry about it for 3 years, it can be very scary for those students. In fact, it's one of the few things that's really going to continue to hamper you throughout the course of your adulthood. In fact, having to pay for it every single month for a certain amount of time for a certain amount of years is ultimately going to become very tiring. And you may end up worrying that you may never be able to pay off your entire student debt in time, because it's just going to keep continuing to be a repetition for you until ultimately the day you die, or ultimately you finally do have those loans forgiven. Trust me, it is something that's going to be very hard for every college student, especially those that ultimately graduated from college and have been away from it for such a long time. It's not easy to do it, but trust me, as long as you follow these tips along with a whole bunch of other resources, so that way you can know exactly how to pay off your student debt and when to do it, not only will you be able to get out of that hole much sooner than later, but ultimately you will be able to pay off all of your loans with relative ease, and that way you can focus more solely on just spending your life with your family and just having a lot of fun doing so. Alright, that's it for this video. Now, obviously paying off your student loans is going to be one of the scariest things for a lot of people fresh out of college are going to do, but it doesn't have to be that hard. So I'd like to hear from all of you. If you are a recent graduate from college or have been away from a long time and have accrued so much, what is it like paying off your student loans? And more importantly, what is it like for you? How are you able to do it? Feel free to let me know down in the comments below, and I'll be more than interested in hearing your opinions about it. And more importantly, if you think that at some point there should be tuition-free college, or maybe something along the lines of a cheaper college, or if you really think of it that way. Anyways, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. As always, if you'd like to see more of my content, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when my latest video is released. Comment below for future suggestions for all my videos, for as blogs, projects, or challenges, you name it. Leave it in the comments below and I'll do my best to make them. As always, follow me on my social media. All the links are in the description below. That's going to do it for this video. I hope you're having another great day. And as always, I hope to see you all again in another video very soon. So long, everybody.